Welcome, sir, for this session. So we'll start in 2-3 minutes.
Sure.
Okay, welcome all the participants to this session, second session of the day. This session will be based on brain source localization and will be taken by Dr. Lalan Kumar. He is assistant professor in IIT Delhi. So let me introduce his biography shortly. Hello. Yes. Yes. So Dr. Lalan Kumar received BTech in electronics from IIT BHU in 2008 and PhD in electrical engineering from IIT Kanpur in June 2015. Prior to joining IIT Kanpur for PhD in 2010, he worked as a software engineer in Motorola Mobile Division, Bangalore. After graduating from IIT Kanpur, he worked as a postdoctoral research fellow in Information System Research Lab, NTU, Singapore. There his work was on blind separation of spectrally overlapped air traffic control speech. He joined School of Electrical Sciences IIT Bhubaneswar as an assistant professor in December 2015. He is currently serving IIT Delhi as an assistant professor since December 2016. His research interest includes array signal processing, source localization, angle of arrival estimation, blind source separation, and brain-computer interface. So with this, I welcome Dr. Lalan Kumar for the today's session. Now I hand over the session to him. Thank you.
Thank you. Udit, you are not visible. So I don't know. I think you are Udit only, right?
Yes, can you see now?
Yes. Thank you.
Yes.
Yeah. So if possible, some more videos can be on. That is, if things allows at your end. So
Participants, you can turn on the videos.
okay. So thank you, Dr. Udit, and thank you everyone for joining this talk. The topic of my talk will be head harmonics domain processing. Am I clearly visible, Udit?
Yes, yes.
Great.
Slides are also visible.
Okay.
Yeah.
Audible. So yeah, topic will be head harmonics domain processing for easy dipole source localization and application. Just to start with, I'm not a neuroscientist or healthcare expert, but you may ask why I'm here for, right? So yeah, my expertise lies in multi-channel signal processing, and the brain signal which is recorded using EEG sensor that happen to fall in this area, that's multi-channel signal processing. So yeah, let's see how it goes ahead. Now this entire presentation, if you will see, that will be like a sandwich. So the beginning part, every one of us will be able to appreciate. The end part also, every one of us will be able to appreciate. But the between will be a little hard, just like a sandwich. So you have to go through that. And if you are there with me, I guarantee that they won't be very difficult. That won't be very difficult. And that hard part will surely inspire to take up a new direction in easy processing. Yeah. So with this, one more thing to note, that there is going to be a long question answer session, which I've seen in my earlier talk as well. So please note down whichever slides you have problem, note down the slide number, and we'll come back there. All right. So with this brief introduction, this is my presentation outline. We'll start with the motivation and introduction of the topic. Then this is the hard part, which is mathematical preliminaries of multi-channel signal processing or array signal processing. We'll look into various head models, and then we'll do the dipole source localization or brain source localization in head harmonics domain. We'll look at the performance evaluation and then various application of this dipole, which we are currently exploring. This will be followed by conclusion and references. Yeah, so to start with dipole source localization or brain source localization. What is that? So whenever we do certain activity or we think of certain activity, that's mental activity, then certain part of the brain gets activated. That activation can be recorded using EEG sensor array. Now, what happens in the brain is whenever we actually do certain activity or think of doing activity, there is a flow of ions from one neuron, we call it source, to another neuron, we call it sink. So this source and sink pair, they form a current dipole. So the name of this model is called equivalent current dipole. And each dipole, such dipole is parameterized by magnitude, location, and orientation. Now, when I say brain source localization or dipole source localization, it means to find out these dipole parameters, that is magnitude, location, and orientation. But we are not very much here for magnitude or orientation. Rather, more we are interested in location, which part of the brain is activated. Now, given this background, this problem is called inverse problem. Now, what is inverse problem? It means that given the head model, you assume certain head model, you assume the source model, which is equivalent current dipole model. We are going to come soon on head models as well. So given the source model and head model, and given the easy recording, finding where that activation is there in the brain, this is called inverse problem. Now, reverse of this is called forward problem. So in forward problem, what we do is we assume that we know the activation, so location of the activation in the brain. And of course, we have certain assumption about the source as well as the head. Now, given the source location, given the source and head model, what will be the easy recording? What will be the easy potential? Right? So that is called forward problem. So forward problem from the source location, finding the easy potential. Inverse problem, finding the source location from the easy potential. So this is the inverse problem which we are going to look at today. Well, that was the introduction. Now, why at all? Where it will be utilized, this brain source localization. Now, one of the application of brain source localization is in finding the center of epilepsy seizure. Now, it is well noted fact that when medication fails to stop epilepsy or epileptic seizure, then epilepsy surgery is the only alternative for neurosurgeon. But for this surgery to happen, it's very, very critical to localize which part of the brain is responsible for this seizure. Now, if you look at the current practice, neurosurgeon, they follow these two practices. First one is called craniotomy, which is open brain surgery. Now here, the neurosurgeons, they create a large hole, large opening in the skull, and then they place the grid of electrode on the surface, directly on the surface of the brain, to identify which part of the brain is responsible for the seizure. Now, placing the entire electrode grid on the brain, directly on the brain, skull and the brain. Brain is the innermost part. That could be very, very uncomfortable, sometimes dangerous, right? And another biggest problem of this method is the patient has to take a call on the surgery, whether he or she has to undergo that surgery or not, right then and there. Now, another method, which is again invasive, that's robot assisted surgery. Now, in this, the neurosurgeon, they use robotic arm to place a fine, thin electrode deep within the brain to record the EEG, and find out which part of the brain is responsible for the surgery. Now, look at, so both these procedures, the current practices, they are invasive and they take from 2 to 8 hours for a neurosurgeon to decide where is that activation in the brain. So here, what we are going to see today has, and we have shown that in our experimental section, that it finds the application which is non-invasive. Now, there is another application with, for brain source localization, which is deep brain stimulation. Now, in this DBS, this again involves placing a thin electrode into one of the several possible brain targets which neurosurgeon thinks of, right? And there is a battery implanted under the chest, skin of the chest. And what this electrode does is it disrupts the abnormal. So whenever there is an abnormal pattern observed, this disrupts that brain activity. So here, where to place that electrode, right? So it can be utilized. This DSL can be utilized. Now, apart from the clinical application, DSL has lot of application in the research side as well. So if you look at, so here we have shown the first figure is the effect of meditation. Now the left figure, the imaging shows that imaging is for the person, the subject in the resting state. Now if you look at the image, although the person is in resting state, but if you look at the image, it doesn't appear to be in the resting state, right? But once he does the meditation for 30 minutes, the same imaging shows that yes, person is actually peaceful or in resting state, right? So this is the effect of meditation. Now, for like effect of music, what is the effect of music on our brain? So this was the recent studies published in the scientific reports by Professor Behra and team, right? So here also they show the effect of music in our brain, right? So here is another application of DSL. Now studying the brain network, right? So we can, for certain set of activity, series of activities, we can plot the potential of the surface electrode, right, against time. And this mapping can be utilized to study the brain network of human. That will give us the valuable information, the human way of thinking, how the human learns something, understands something, right? So here is another application of brain source localization. Hopefully you are motivated enough with the application. Now let us go into the next part of the sandwich. This is little hard, but please be with me. Yeah. So suppose there are I number of sensors located in any format. We are not restricting any certain formation here. So there is I. So they form. They might have any formation: circular, linear, spherical, anything. But yeah, something regular. Yeah. So suppose there is I number of sensor, and there are n number of sources, right, which is incident over those array of those sensors. Now the data that could be EEG potential if it is an EEG sensor, that could be pressure if it is a microphone sensor, right? EM signal if it is an antenna array. So this is the most general data model which is presented in equation 1. And of course, proof you can look at the thesis which I have cited here. So the data received at I number of sensor due to L number of sources is given as equation number 1, where A is called steering matrix. Now, steering matrix is collection of steering vectors. This steering vector, particular steering vector, is given in equation number 3. Now, this equation, let us try to remember it because we are going to use it again and again. Only the name will change and form. Notation will change, but the same thing is going to remain. The received signal is equal to some matrix, which we call it steering matrix. For brain source localization, we call it lead field matrix. So whether you call it lead field matrix or steering matrix, concept remains the same. So received signal equal to steering matrix into the actual signal, the source signal. Of course, there will be additive noise. So P equal to AS, that is the data model. Let's try to remember that. Now, once we have the data acquired, what next? So then we jump into our problem, which is source localization. Now, the source localization could be of two types: far field source localization or near field source localization. Now, when I say far field source localization, it means that the desired or the target source is located at infinite distance, theoretically, but for all practical purposes, they are beyond 1 meter or so. So that is far field source localization. So in the far field source localization, we are not interested in finding range. So if you look at, it's like r theta phi, these are the coordinate. So there we are just interested in finding what is theta and phi, azimuth and elevation. So that's far field source localization. Now, another source localization is near field source localization, where we are interested in finding range as well as azimuth and elevation. Or if you go to Cartesian coordinate, we are interested in finding all three coordinates, x, y, and z. Now note that our brain, this is brain, and when we are trying to find out the active part of the brain, right? So because we are using the EEG sensor array, so in this particular case, the application is near field source localization. So in this case, we will be finding out all three coordinates, which is x, y, and z. Now there are various way of finding the source, right? Given the signal what we collect using the sensor array. So one of the approach, or in fact, I'm going to discuss here two approaches. One is beamforming based approach, another is subspace based approach. Now, what is beamforming based approach? Beamforming is something like spatial filtering. You know, frequency filter, right? Where you allow certain frequency to pass and reject certain frequency. Now here, it's a spatial filter where we pass the signal from particular direction and reject the signal from another direction, right? And so what we do is, so given a sensor array, we say, dear array, look into this direction, meaning pass the signal, accept the signal from this direction and reject signal coming from any other direction. Now, how do we do that? We do that using certain weight vector. So look at here, these are the sensors, that cross mark, and we multiply the so with a weight vector, at each sensor array, sensor element output, and we call that a beamformed output. So that beamformed output is given in equation number 4 here. Now, once we have the beamformed output, we can find the power spectrum, which is P0, P0 Hermitian, expectation of that. That is equation number 5. Now, see, this W, the weight, is a function of the direction. Now, given the direction, we say that array look into direction theta, and now we change the theta, that direction, in all field of the view, say 0 to 360 for for entire azimuth. Now, whenever our array steers into direction of the source, the power will be maximum. So this is the principle of beamforming based source localization. Now, based on the different constraints, we land up into different beamformers. So the way we define the constraint, we land up in different beamformers. Here is an example of minimum variance distortion less response beamformer. So as the name says, this gives us minimum variance. So when I say minimum variance, it's a minimum noise variance and distortionless constraints, meaning that suppose source is coming from theta naught, then the gain from the theta naught should be 1. That is distortionless, right? So this is achieved by maximizing the signal to interference plus noise ratio. Now, maximizing the signal, so this is numerator is the signal power. If you look at equation 4 here, so the first part is the signal power, the second one is the noise part. So, maximizing the signal, signal to interference or noise interference plus noise ratio is like maximizing this term here. Now, for maximizing this term, we need to minimize the denominator, right? So this minimizing the denominator means minimizing the W Hermitian RVW, right? And the second, so this is like minimum variance, minimum noise plus interference variance. Now the second term we said was distortion-less response. That is W Hermitian A is equal to 1. So that is distortion-less response. So this is the optimization problem for MVDR, equation 7. Now when we solve this using Lagrangian multiplier, we land up in equation number 8 for the weight of the beamformer. Now, if you look at this expression for weight, this involves the term RV. This is the noise covariance matrix. Now, we don't have the access to noise covariance matrix. Now, if you look at equation number 4, we have access to what we receive, which is P, or after beamforming P naught. We don't have access to V, right? So what we do is we replace this RV with RP. So in fact, this beamforming, here we are minimizing the noise variance. So rather than minimizing the noise variance, we can minimize the array output, and that is called MPDR, minimizing a minimum power to distortion-less response. So once we do that, right, and then this is W becomes RP, just replacing RV with RP. And then we have W. Once we have the W, we can put into the expression here in 5. So that is power spectrum or output power. So we come to the final expression of power spectrum of MVDR, which is 10. Now this is function of, as I said, angle. Now when we plot this power spectrum, right? So at the angle of arrival, we are supposed to get a peak, and this is what we see. Now here we have considered a uniform linear array with 10 sensors, 2 sources at 20 and 60. This is the MVDR power spectrum. Now you can look at for 2 sources, we are getting 2 peaks. Now we saw what is MVDR. Now we are going to look at another subspace-based method, which is called music. Music, not that here is multiple signal classification. Now we again start with the data model, which we started the presentation today. So the received signal is steering matrix into the source signal plus additive noise. Now why it is called subspace-based method will be clear very soon. Now once we have that received signal, which is P, we find the array covariance matrix RP, which is Ri plus sigma square I. Now Ri is, if you note it, is A RS A Hermitian. Now if you look at this decomposition, See, A is steering matrix. Okay. Now, I is the number of sensor which has to be greater than number of sources for detecting that sources. So here I is greater than L, which is number of sources. Now, if you look at A is the steering matrix, which is collection of steering vectors. Now it has L columns, which is linearly independent for L number of sources. So A becomes a full little bit of linear algebra, and that's not very difficult to understand, I hope. And I'll be done with this quickly. So the steering matrix A will be full column rank matrix, right? Because it has L independent columns. Now RS is the signal covariance matrix, which is a positive definite matrix, L cross L matrix, because it has all the eigenvectors which is positive, given by the signal powers. Now, if you look at Ri is a I cross I matrix, right, whose rank is L. So it will have L number of L is less than I, L number of eigenvalues which will be non-zero, meaning I minus L number of eigenvalues will be 0, right? So this is what I have explained here. So now suppose Qu is the uth eigenvector corresponding to the 0 eigenvalue, right? Then I can write Riqu, that will be equal to 0, right? X equal to lambda x, which we have known, right? Lambda is 0 here. So now that forms the equation 15. Now we can multiply both sides with Qu Hermitian. Now this is the definition of positive definite matrix, right? X transpose, if it is 0 and A is a positive definite matrix, then X will be 0. So this is what, because RS is a positive definite matrix, then A Hermitian Qu will be 0. So A is the collection of all small a's, which is steering vectors. So for all L, 1 to capital L, this relation holds. What do we understand from this is that the noise eigenvector Qu will be orthogonal, right, to the steering vector, L steering vector. And this is the principle of music. So what we do is we collect all those eigenvectors corresponding to the 0 eigenvalues. So we had the signal, we did we found the covariance matrix, did the eigenvalue decomposition, and we collected all those eigenvectors which are corresponding to the 0 eigenvectors, but not it. We are doing on Ri, not on Rp. So we'll come to that later. So we collected all those eigenvectors and we called it, because this is corresponding to the noise eigenvalues, we are calling this to be noise subspace. Now, as we know that A Hermitian Qu was 0, right? So we took for all the noise eigenvectors, and so and formulated this sum. Now, because ideally this is supposed to be 0, right? Then when we place 1 over something 0, what we expect is again a peak. So music spectrum also gives a peak. Now see, phi is the variable here. Now, so we vary the phi, and whenever this expression gives a peak, we say that source is present in that direction. That is the multiple signal classification. So for L sources, we'll take L largest peak. Now, as I said, that we are not working on, we don't have access to Ri, we have access to Rp. Rp was Ri plus sigma square I, that noise component was also there. So what we do is, given P, we find the sample covariance matrix as equation 19 for NS number of snapshot. Now, Now suppose lambda I is eigenvalue of Ri and corresponding eigenvector is Qi. We can write equation 13. Now Rp Qi, Rp is Ri plus sigma square I, right? So that way we can see here that if Qi is eigenvector of Ri, then Qi is the eigenvector of Rp also. So the theory which we developed for Ri, the same thing can be used for Rp also. So the noise subspace and those orthogonality of steering vector with noise subspace, everything is valid in Rp domain or P domain also. Yeah. So once this is the eigenvalue decomposition of Rp, and we collect all those noise eigenvectors corresponding to the I minus L noise eigenvalues, and we call this to be noise subspace. The eigenvectors corresponding to the signal lambda 1 to lambda L, they are called signal subspace. Now, hopefully you understand why it is called subspace based source localization, right? Now, once we have that noise subspace, we can go to this using spectrum and plot and get the source location. And this is what we have done here. This is the illustration of what we said just now. So this is music magnitude spectrum for two closely spaced sources. Maybe some background noise. So there are two sources at 60 and 65 degree, and we used 15 sensor. 5 sensors. So for the 5 sensor, it is not able to localize. We are not getting 2 peaks, but when you use, we have to increase the number of sensor, then we can localize even the closely spaced sources. So yeah, we can see 2 peaks for 2 sources. Done. Now we are coming to the actual part of today's talk. So we'll start with the head models. Now, before going to head models, I will introduce one term called spherical harmonics. Now, just like we know many basis function, right? Exponential is one of the basis function. So spherical harmonics is another basis functions, and these basis functions are utilized to represent function defined over entire sphere, right? So just like exponential is a basis function defined over unit circle, spherical harmonics is a basis function defined over, or that is utilized to define a function over entire sphere, right? So now some example is here, spherical microphone array. So here the sensor is placed over entire sphere. So here spherical harmonics can be used as a basis function to represent the function. For example, the pressure in this case. Now, so there have been various kinds of head models which researchers have come up with. So in the literature we can find out the human head was approximated as a sphere, right? So they said initially that it's a single layer sphere. We call it IHIC model, infinite homogeneous isotropic conductor, meaning the same conductivity is there in the entire head. So this is called IHIC model. Then later they came up with the 3-cell model, which is so in this case the human head was divided into 3 cells, which is brain, skull, and skull, with different conductivity, which is shown here. After that, there was different head model, which was called 4-cell head model, and there they introduced one more thin layer, which is called CSF. And then the most recent head model, again, so all these are spherical, is 6-cell model, right? So all these are considering that human head is spherical in nature. Now, because they assume this head to be spherical, then spherical harmonics became a natural choice for EEG source reconstruction and localization, right? But what we observed was, or what is our logic, that the EEG sensor, which is placed to acquire the EEG signal, does not assume the shape of sphere, right? If you look at the shape, here the spherical microphone array, microphone assumes the array arrangement. They assume the form of complete sphere, but you know, if you look at the EEG placement, that does not accept or assume the form of full sphere. So yeah, so apart from this mathematical, those were the mathematical model, but there is something called realistic head model as well, which people have been exploring nowadays, and they are based on boundary element method and finite element method. So of course we are not going, but this realistic head model, they require MRI scan of the subject. So that is the limitation of this head model. So we are not going to get into realistic head model. We are just will be exploring the other mathematical head model. And yeah, so this is what I was trying to say, that the easy placement over the head, right? It does not assume the form of sphere. Rather, it assumes the shape is more close to hemisphere than sphere. So this was our first work, which we published in 2018. And there our logic was, then rather than using the spherical harmonics, let us use, we call hemispherical harmonics. So this, because the shape is close to hemispherical, we will call it hemispherical harmonics. And because the EEG function, EEG signal assumes the shape of hemisphere, now utilizing the spherical harmonics, which has the inherent assumption of signal present over entire sphere, right? If you use the spherical harmonics, it will require more number of coefficients, as this is the DSP concept, that any function which is discontinuous. Now here is this case, this is discontinuous over after hemisphere. There is no EEG present after hemisphere. So, so there is more number of coefficients will be required, and it's uneconomic to present data over hemisphere, right? By more number of SH or spherical coefficients. Now we moved further, and we found some data set, and we saw that yes, actually speaking, the EEG sensor placement, it does not assume the sphere, nor it assume hemisphere, but it is rather between the sphere and hemisphere. So this is the some dimension of average human head, which is given here. Now we found this, and based on this dimension, we came up with the head harmonics. So this is head harmonics basis function, which will be utilized to define or analyze the EEG signal over head. Yeah. So this is the source model, which we already talked about. So we are going to use it. So given the head model, which we discussed till now, and the source model. So source model, what we are going, so head model, we are going to use one of those head model. Source model is equivalent current dipole source model, where there, as I said, there is one source and sink they form a dipole, and the neurons with the same positive negative direction reason, they mimic, like, of the current, they mimic a one strong. So if they are in the same, similar or nearby region, we can approximate them with a strong dipole. So this is the equivalent current dipole model. Now here that dipole is, as I said, parameterized by orientation, magnitude, and location. So the location is here given by RP. So for pth dipole, that location is given by XP, YP, ZP, and the dipole moment is defined as dpx, dpy, dpz, as shown here. Theta is the elevation, and phi is the azimuth in this case. Yeah, and this dipole moment will have, I will show that later, it has orientation and the magnitude in itself. So the pth dipole location is represented by RP, and ith sensor location on head is denoted by Ri, which is given here. Yeah, so we are going to use two head model in particular, and the results we are going to show for four layer head model. So the first one is IHIC model, which assumes the source or the head to be of single conductivity, and the second one is 3-layer concentric head model. Yeah. So this is IHIC head model. Now equation 21, this is not my contribution. So in single layer head model, the potential at pth dipole, due to pth dipole at ith sensor is given by equation 21. Now, because potential is a scalar quantity, right? So the total potential, suppose there are number of P1, P2, P3, they are denoting the different dipoles. Now at say R1, the potential will be due to P1, P2, and P3. So at R1, the potential will be the summation of all the active dipoles at that time. Similarly at R2 and so on. So this is what I have done in equation 2 and presented in equation 23 in a matrix form, right? Now here G is called lead field matrix, right? And all the expressions are there. So let us not go into detail. So V is GD. Now D is decomposed, as I said earlier, into orientation moment, and the magnitude is called moment intensity matrix. So dipole intensity and dipole orientation, right? So that is D. Now D is decomposed as MS, and we are combining G, the lead field matrix, with M, and we are again calling as A, and S we are separating it out. And if you look at this data model, is again the same. V, the potential, is equal to steering matrix, something like a steering matrix into the speed. So this is what our contribution was, for the single layer case. So once we have this, let us talk about the 3-layer concentric head model. So again, so here we have R1, R2, and capital R with different conductivity. Not going to the detail. Now here, the potential at ith sensor looks like something like in equation 28. Now it's ugly, but that's not our contribution. Now we took this and we did certain mathematical manipulation, which is already present in the paper. If you are interested, you can go through. And after the mathematical simplification, we come to equation 31, which is very much similar to our original sum matrix into sum matrix. And with further simplification, we have shown that yes, the signal again, the signal again can be written as A into S. So that complicated matrix we brought down to very well-known simplified form, and I mean the same concept of steering matrix, etc., can be used for localizing which part of the brain is active. Because this is this steering matrix has the information about the location, right? Which is the when I say location, it's azimuth, elevation, and the range. Yeah. So this was the head model and how we converted that into our standard data model. We call that data model as spatio-temporal data model. Why? Because we have the spatial information and it's in time domain. Now, now we are going to talk about the head harmonics data model. But before introducing the head harmonics, we'll look into something called spherical harmonics transform. So, Fourier transform, normal Fourier transform, this is not different from, I mean, you can, it has a one-to-one correspondence between normal Fourier transform, and you can find that. So the difference is, as I said, there we use the basis function as exponential. Here we use the basis function as spherical harmonics. So this is the spherical harmonics basis function. There we compute the Fourier transform over unit circle. Here we compute the spherical harmonics transform over unit sphere. So because it is over unit sphere, it's a spatial transform, that was temporal transform. So it's a spatial transform, so that dA is replaced with R, as we know that R squared sine theta d theta d phi, right? R is 1 here. So exactly the same thing. Now you say, sir, where is that conjugate, right? In the normal Fourier transform, we do the conjugate xt exponential minus j omega t, right? Conjugate of the basis function. Now here we are trying to do real spherical Fourier transform. Now why we are not doing into like time to frequency or vice versa, because signal for us, it's a in the time domain, they are real. So we are applying real spherical harmonics transform. So the basis function they are using is real. So even if you put conjugate, doesn't make any sense. Yeah. So this is the spherical harmonics transform. Why we are doing, we'll soon get into that soon. Now another thing to note here is that equation 35, it assumes that the V, the potential, is present over entire sphere. For now, let us assume that our head is actual sphere. So then the theta is varying from 0 to pi, and phi is varying from 0 to 2 pi, right? But actually that is not the case, right? The EG sensor is spatially distributed, right? Spatially sampled. You know there is something called time sample, right? But here it is spatially sampled, so that integration can be converted into a summation form, which is question 36 here, right? Now so yeah, that is the way we, I mean, for converting any integration into a summation, we introduce some sampling weights, which is AI here. Now this equation 36 can be written in the matrix form for all I, for all for all I as equation 37. Now what do we see here is that if you want to take the spherical harmonics transform, so from the, as I said, spatio-temporal domain to spherical harmonics transform, if you want to do, just multiply with this one matrix, which is Y transpose tau, right? So once you do that, we come to a new domain, which we call it spherical harmonics domain, and that looks, that gives a lot of advantage. We'll see that. Okay. Yeah. So what is spherical harmonics? So this is a spherical harmonics expression with the spherical harmonics basis function, where the this is the normalization constant. We know that any basis function has to be orthonormal, right? So KNM is the orthonormality constant, and PNM is called associated Legendre polynomial. Now this is orthogonal function, which is defined over entire elevation. Elevation varies from 0 to pi, and azimuth vary from 0 to 2 pi for entire sphere. So for defining entire sphere, this orthogonality of the associated Legendre polynomial, that orthonormal relation is given in 40. So here is the clue of head harmonics. What's that? See, for the head shape, rather, azimuth is entire 0 to 360, fine, but elevation is not from 0 to pi. Rather, it is for the dimension which we showed there, it was from 0 to 2 pi by 3, 120 degree, right? Yeah. So for defining a different associated Legendre polynomial, we call it shifted associated Legendre polynomial, right? That should be orthogonal over 0 to 2 pi by 3. We can use a different associated Legendre polynomial called, that is called shifted, and that shifting constant is computed on the principle here, and it is given in equation number 41. So once we have this shifted associated Legendre polynomial, we need to have a different ortho or orthonormal constant KNM, which I said, and using this KNM and this shifted associated Legendre polynomial, we define a new head harmonics defined over our head that can be utilized to decompose, take the spatial transform and process our EEG signal. Now, if you look at equation 44, right? So once we have V, we can multiply as the same I said in the beginning with this sum matrix and come to a different domain, which is we are calling this to be a head harmonics domain. Now, replacing this signal, we have the mathematical formulation for ANM, how this ANM will look like. That will be function of r theta phi or x y z. And once we have the expression for ANM, which is steering matrix, right? Collection of steering vectors. So once we have the expression for steering vector, mathematical expression for a steering vector, we can formulate the music as I said in the beginning and do the source localization. Now, one of the benefits which we see of coming from spatial domain, spatio-temporal domain to head harmonics domain was dimensionality reduction. I mean, I'm not going to detail again here. So the dimensionality is reduced from I to n plus 1 whole square. So n plus 1 square, n is the mode strength and all. So let us not talk here. And that entire term is less than. So that, there is dimension reduction. And we are going to see the effect of this in terms of computation time in the performance evaluation. So this is how the plot for head harmonics looks like for different order and degree. Now, once we have that, as I said, we can do this. So that was the mathematical description of steering matrix and steering vector. And now, being finally the source localization algorithm. Now, here there is one thing to note, which we want to focus here, is there are two kinds of source localization. One is called dipole imaging, and another is called dipole fitting. Now, for any activity, actually speaking, there is a large part of the brain gets activated, or large number of sources in the brain, large number of dipoles gets activated in the brain. Now, so this is what dipole imaging is based on. So dipole imaging or distributed method, they assume that there is large number of dipoles or sources for any given activity. Now, at the max, we can have 256, 128 channel EEG, right? And for any activity, there could be thousands and thousands of dipoles getting activated. So the problem becomes highly underdetermined. So to solve this dipole imaging, there are further constraints, right? These are the constraints which is utilized for for source localization, for source location estimation. On the other side, dipole fitting is much simpler approach. As I said, the equivalent current dipole model, what it assumes is the sources, like in the same direction, they can be limited into a larger dipole. So here we assume that like for a given activity, the source which is having the highest activation is lesser than the number of the sensor. So that is the approach, which is a simplistic approach. We call it dipole fitting. And music, MVDR, etc., which we just discussed, they fall under this category of dipole fitting. Yeah. So once we have that, so this is the like form of music, head harmonics music. So let us not go into again details. So PN is again the noise subspace. I said numerator is just for the I mean there's nothing great about the numerator, but if you put that numerator in equation 47, that gives us further flexibility in the mathematical simplicity, which so but yeah, this is the normal music expression which we have seen already. Yeah, so this is what we did. After doing certain simplicity, we get into further simplified music algorithm, which is 52 here. So there is music, and there is many variation of music, which people have called recursive music, rap music, recursively applied music, right? So I mean those are not again my contribution. Recursive music was there, rap music was there. We have formulated all those in this head harmonics domain, and that is equation 53 and equation 55. So that is recursively applied and projected music, rap music. So these are the various methods which we are going to compare within the performance evaluation. So this is the last part of the sandwich, and I'm sure you're going to enjoy it. So this is the experimental condition which we have used. So we have taken IHRC model for in this case of for experimental validation with yeah, the radius was considered 86 mm, total 64 electrode was used, and that intergrid scanning gap was 1 mm. The number of snapshot 100, independent trial was 50, and this is the computational information. Yeah, so again, so things remains the same. You can see here, we are going to look at activation as a peak, right, at that location. So this is the simulated data, simulation results to start with. So we took 2 active sources at these 2 locations. Now, this is in spatial domain. So we are going to look at spatial, as I said, spatio-temporal domain and head harmonics domain. So the first one is music, rap, recursive music, and rap music, right? So this is the 3D plot. The ABC is the 3D plot, and DEF is the corresponding 2D plot. So we can look at this is I mean activation for two sources at these two locations. So this is localization in the spatial domain. But when we do the same in space, head harmonics domain, this is the accuracy, or this is the localization we get. So yeah, you can see the localization is more with higher resolution in this case when compared to the spatial counterpart. Yeah. So this is H square music, H square R music, H square rate music. We did RMSE computation as well, X and Y for given Z, and then we compare spatial and head harmonics counterpart at different SNR, and we can observe with this table that at each SNR these H harmonics domain methods, they have the lower RMSE when compared with the spatial counterparts. Yeah. So effect of harmonics order, again, the spatial domain does not show any effect. As I said, I'm not talking here on the order, but yeah, for 64 sensor, we can go up to n equal to 6, and that way the dimensionality becomes n plus 1 square, means 49. So we are reducing the dimensionality from 64 to 49. At the same time, with the lower dimensionality, we are having lower RMSE at say even 5. So if you take 5 n as 5, then dimensionality is reduced from 64 to 36 n plus 1 whole square. So 64 to 36, and we are having lower RMSE. Yeah. So here it is source correlation, the RMSE plot with respect to the source correlation. Again, we are comparing the spatial with the head harmonics counterpart, and we can see that with increase, because it's like dipoles, they at a time can be very, very correlated. So with the high correlation also, RMSE is lower for the head harmonics counterparts. Yeah, as I said, that computation time, because there is a dimensionality reduction, so that is reflected not in the computation time as well. And we can see that the head harmonics domain, they have lower computation time when compared to the spatial domain for all the algorithm. Yeah, so we compared the standard deviation ratio of the spatial domain algorithm to that of the head harmonics algorithm. So we can see that ratio is greater than one here. Yeah, so that shows that the localization ability of head harmonics domain is better or higher stability when compared to the spatial domain counterpart. So yeah, the spatial domain has got head harmonics domain has got lower variance. Yeah. Now come to this real data experiment. Now in the real data experiment, we have tested with the various data, these algorithms. So the first one with subject performing arithmetic task, then subject given visual stimuli, and we have also tested with the Caesar data set. Now for this subject performing arithmetic task, we have used a Physionet dataset for source localization. Now here the arithmetic task was the serial subtraction of two numbers. This trial started with the communicating orally 4-digit and minimum and 2-digit subtrahend numbers. The dataset contains easy recording of subjects before and during the performance of the mental arithmetic task using Neurocom Easy 23 channel system. Now, what we did is we took 5 easy recording randomly from the good count quality subject dataset, and each easy recording was divided into 5 short interval of 12 seconds. So total, we took 5 subjects, and that for each subject that was divided into 5 intervals of 12 second each. Yeah. So here we are plotting that network with localization, as I said in the beginning, brain network. So that behavior is plotted here. So the top figure A to E is for a particular subject, and from F to J is the average localization, average over all that 5 subjects, that is there here. So you can see here in those 5 time slots, the plot, and we can see that the average behavior is very much close to the individual one. Yeah. So this is the another real data set which we utilize for source localization. So this is the EasySet data set which we collected at Neurocomputing Lab, IIT Delhi. The subject had normal vision and no history of neurological illness. They were placed in front of a display. A series of images were presented for 300 milliseconds. The signal recording was done using 64 channel brain vision active channel amplifier at sampling frequency of 256 Hz. Right? H-square music based active brain source localization was performed, and that plot is given here. So when we give any visual stimuli, right, we expect the activation in occipital lobe part of the brain, and this is what we observe in this case. So now localization we also do for seizure attack data. So we use real data set collected in EMS. Now this AZ was recorded again using 64 channel. Other details are here. Now there was 2 types of data set, as I said. So this is for localized seizure. So now for this localized seizure, we can see when we plotted this, right? So here cost function was summed up across the Z. So we plotted X, Y, and Z all, and then we summed up to C. So yeah, we can see that there is localized peak which can be seen in this plot, right? So this is for localized seizure. Now there was again this is for generalized seizure. Now in the case of generalized seizure, I mean, doctor just told us that that was localized and this is generalized seizure. So and they didn't give me the exact location. So yeah, we didn't verify that, whether we are XYZ coordinate is correct or not. But yeah, in the localized case, we got a localized peak, and in the generalized case, we can see a generalized peak spreading from somewhere, and originating from some place in the brain and spreading throughout the brain. So that is the case of generalized peak. Now these are the applications which we are targeting. These are the ongoing. Some of this work is like under review or something, or under preparation. So yeah, so we saw that yes, this brain source localization can be used in hand trajectory estimation. So this is data set from, I think, Nature. So they have given data set for lift and grass movement. So 32 channel again they have used for EEG acquisition. So after the visual stimulus, this subject has to lift that object. I mean, initially the subject was in resting state. When that visual stimulus is shown, the subject goes pick up that object and lift that object, place it down, come back to the resting state. So that is the complete trajectory. And for this trajectory, we use our source localization based approach. And then, so one very, very important fact which we saw was is presented here. So what happens is that when we flash any, when we give any visual stimulus, so this is the brain status at different time interval. So at 0 second, that visual stimulus was shown to the subject, and we can see that the occipital, this is the occipital part of the brain, so that gets activated after around 80 milliseconds. So 0 second activation, that stimulus was shown, the brain gets activated around 80 to 100 milliseconds, and it takes around around 200 say D, right? So that information in the occipital part, because it's a motor activity, right, and it's right hand motor activity, then contralateral part of the brain, which is the left hand side of the brain, will get activated. So from occipital part, that information has to get transferred into sensory motor part of the brain, and that takes around 300 milliseconds, or 400 milliseconds. You can see that. So around 400 milliseconds, which is F, right? So this is the left contralateral part of the brain that's get activated, and once that's get activated, actually the movement was, so I mean this analysis which we have done, they have given this timing information, right? And this paper is online available now. So yeah, so this movement starts at 400 movement starts at 650 milliseconds. So that is around H or I, around I. Okay, so look at here at I, there's no activity in the brain. So when movement starts, there's no activity. Now there's a clue here, So movement starts at I, which is at 700 milliseconds, and the information in the brain is available at 400 milliseconds. So 300 milliseconds before the movement, the EEG signal is already there. So EEG has the information of movement 300 milliseconds before the actual movement, and this is what we utilized in this trajectory estimation and given the plot here. So what we did is, so we have the movement information. We took those EEG, right, which is from the movement 300 milliseconds before the movement, and not only that, we did the source localization and saw that which sensory or which EEG signal we should take from. Not like, if you are doing right hand movement, then contralateral part will get more activated. So this part of the sensor will have better EEG signal, which will give us the better features for our classification or trajectory estimation. So with this source localization information, we did, and we can see here that we are very, very close to, they had given the measured trajectory, and we are very close to that the predicted trajectory is very close to the measured trajectory, with correlation more than 0.9%, 0.9 is 95, around 95%. Yeah, so that was in hand trajectory estimation. We can do that. Now the second thing we are doing is for BCI system design, also we can use this source localization. Now, till now, there is not much study people are doing on motor imaginary or motor execution, but comparison was not there. So what we have done is, we took some data set which has combination of these two GigaScience EG data set of left and right hand data set, which has motor imaginary as well as motor execution task. Now, if you look at this is cortical source activation A for left motor imaginary part. So when it is left motor imaginary, activation will happen in the right side of the brain, right contralateral side. For the right motor imaginary task, left contralateral side of the brain. So this is what you can see in the motor imaginary, and this is the motor execution. Now, if you look at the motor imaginary and motor execution, right? So the part of the brain which gets activated, and in fact, we have seen the magnitude as well, both differs. So from motor imaginary, we cannot or we will not be able to better do or better job, better predict the motor execution part. So this is where, the role of source localization comes in for, differentiating the motor execution and motor imaginary task. So here, so traditional, this is the block diagram which we have given. This is the traditional way of designing the BCI system. So what the people do is they take this is the easy recording, do the pre-processing, which is there with everyone, and then they use this spatiotemporal data which is there from the sensor, and extract certain feature and do the design the BCI system. Now what we do is, if we go to source domain, now look at, so this V is A into S, right? Now rather than working on the V domain, let's go to the source domain, which is S, right? S is somewhat, I said we can estimate the source orientation, location, magnitude, everything, right? So we can estimate A, find S. Now if you estimate this cortical current, right, and then in that part of the brain, we can take the sensor data from that part and then do the feature extraction, and so that has shown in our case that gives a better classification accuracy, and of course that can give us a better BCI control, right? And this is what we have shown here: classification accuracy, sensor domain, sense source domain, and motor imaginary, motor execution. Yeah, this is the source seizure diagnosis. Again, this is, we are working on the 4 layer now, and this is the spatial music A, SH music, H-square music. So you can look at this spatial or SH spherical harmonics. They are less accurate or less, if you work in the head harmonics domain, the accuracy or resolution is better, resolution is higher. And we did this for, again, the real epilepsy data. So this we took epilepsy data from one of the neurosurgeon, and we plotted that, and we said that, it's like, you can see. So this is the left part. I said, so this is the dipole. So they gave us the EG data, they gave us the MRI data also, and then we could do the dipole imaging localization, and this is the dipole imaging, and we can see that the seizure is on the left temporal lobe, right? So which is there, that information is from the imaging source imaging method also, but here we used our head harmonics method, 4 layer, and we can see here that this also gives us this shows that entire temporal lobe is the affected one, entire temporal lobe. And when I gave this information to the doctor said, yes, in fact, in this patient, he had removed the entire temporal lobe. So some places it could be the localized seizure, which I showed that, we can find the very, localized point in the brain, which part of the brain is, we can find that. We could verify with this. Now, how I say that? I mean, there is a XYZ coordinate, and I'll take it maybe as a question answer. But yeah, we can find and we can see that. Conclusion. Thank you so much. I think I have taken enough time, and I'm open for question answer. Yeah. So this work is done by my PhD student Amita Giri, and these are all information are there in our homepage. You are most welcome to visit our homepage. Thank you. Over to Udit.
Thank you, sir. So, dear participants, if you have any questions, you can please ask. Participants, please ask the questions. It seems that everybody
is Bhagat.
So session
Hello?
was so much informative. Yeah, yes, sir. The session was so much informative. Yeah, it was a wonderful session, sir.
Thank you.
Somebody was having questions, so please ask.
Yeah, this is Bhagat. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah,
Right.
okay. First of all, this session was very informative. I learned a lot of concepts. Being a computer science student, I learned a lot more about this technology format related with artificial intelligence. But main query is when you showed the concept about brain functionality, that is neuron functionality something. So is it possible to view it in a real way or only with that format alone to show the functionalities?
Let me repeat your question. Maybe I didn't catch your question properly. So,
Okay.
and like when we I mean, can you repeat your last part? Like neuron, catching neuron. Yeah. What did you say?
Yeah. When you shown about brain functionalities, is it that part, that slide?
Correct.
Yeah. So is it possible to see it in a real view or only the that format alone?
I mean, so you say that whether I can view that neuron in the real view?
Yes,
right? Or,
correct. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So basically, I mean, I'm not sure. So what we can do is we can find that localization. We can I mean, I'm not sure how we can view that dipole, active dipole, right? But just when we do certain activity, we can surely find where that localization is, where that active part is, where that dipole is, what is the intensity of that dipole. I mean, looking at the dipole, viewing the dipole, I don't know, I mean, how much is your, I mean, going into, or I don't think there is any method to go and see. Rather, you can, as I showed various things, you can look into, you can look at, look as dipole imaging or dipole fitting, two kinds of plot I showed, right? So once we collect the EEG data or MRI data, then from there we can predict, yeah, this is the part of the brain which is active, which is responsible for this activity. But how that dipole look like, I mean, yeah, I'm not sure if there is an instrument, I don't think so. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, fine. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, I was having some questions.
Yes.
So you are recording EEG signals. So EEG signals at the surface will give some of the sources. So how do we determine how many sources are there or how many dipoles are there?
Correct. So this is a very, very relevant question. In fact, how do we do that? So let me share that my screen again, and I will. So this is. So, yeah. So look at this matrix, equation 20. Now here, if you do the eigenvalue decomposition of the received covariance matrix, right, you can surely see that so eigenvalues are from lambda 1 to lambda n, right? So you will certainly find some eigenvalues which will be much larger than the rest of the other eigenvalues. So here we can put a threshold, okay, right? So I mean, you can see that other eigenvalues are like, I mean, relatively much smaller than the rest of them. So that will give you L, and L is your number of sources.
And one more related question, like it depends on the number of channels we are using. So if we have more number of channels, we can actually locate even more nearby dipoles. There could be more sources, right?
Correct. This is what I said, that I mean, L should be less than I, right? Number of sensors. So now, as you increase I, you can increase more and more. I mean, you can localize more and more number of sources.
Yes.
Right. But I mean, in the ECD, as I said, ECD model, equivalent current dipole model, what generally, like for any certain activity, right? As I said, that the nearby dipoles, right, they are mimicked into a single dipole. Okay. So that way, I mean, we get a single pole or single pick, right?
Yes.
So if you want to go for that more detail, then image, source imaging is the another method which I discussed, and so on, right? So yeah.
Another question is that you're using EEG MAT dataset for which performs a serial subtraction task, and it can originate the location of that particular task. So if I remember, the database does not give the location. So how do you determine that whatever the location came, that is correct?
Correct. Okay. So yes. So I think So if you do this I mean, if you do any mental activity, if I'm not wrong, so this is frontal part of the brain gets activated.
Yes.
Correct? Right?
Yes.
So this is what you can see here. Okay. So this is what I mean, verified here, that yes, because the frontal part of the brain gets activated, and I mean, this is what we should expect. Right?
But
So
in the figure D, you see that there is a high energy in the back side, it seems.
Yeah, so this is like, I mean, overall flow. I mean, person is like, like, 60-second data, I think, right? So it's like, with respect to time, what is happening.
So
right?
this is actually average of all the subjects, or it's a subject-wise figure?
The top row is for a single subject.
Okay.
And the bottom one is averaged over 5 subjects.
Okay.
And this plot is, you can see that it's like, with time, this, in the time. So how that localization propagates, right? Which part, with time. So that is what we can see. But look at this average one. So it's somewhat like, frontal part of the brain is getting activated. Okay. Now, this is the same question can be asked for, like, this is for occipital part of the brain, or for this part, how do you, verify that location claim is correct or not, right? But this data set was not marked by EMS doctor. Rather, he just said that this is a localized seizure. This is what we know.
Just curious to know, like, how do we determine real time, or doctor can determine like it is a localized or generalized by seeing the
Okay.
patient activity? So what kind of activity patient performs?
Yeah, that answer I can't give. That is only you can ask to doctors. I mean, I have started collaborating with them, and started talking. They are two busy persons, right? And last 1 year,
Yes.
you know that, right? So, and getting them is very, very difficult. You know that, right? On board. So, but I mean, as I said, literature I reviewed in the beginning, right? So there are different methods: open brain surgery and
Yeah.
robot assisted surgery, right? These are the way. And sometimes, like, they superimpose, they say, I mean, sometimes they use their experience. See, if you look at the current EEG papers, most of the researcher, right, they'll say that, okay, I mean, it's based on just their experience that this part of the brain will get activated. Let us use this entire part. Let's use the entire motor cortex. Let's use the entire occipital lobe, like that. But if you look at my thing, we give you the location, right? This to this part of the brain is there. You can use this only, and that will provide you the better feature, for your BCI, for trajectory estimation, for seizure localization, right? So that's what we stand for.
Last question is, there was one figure actually. So was that MRI? I don't remember the slide number. I think 60.
Okay. Yeah.
There was a brain figure was there. Like human.
Yeah, that was.
I think in the last, not this one.
Last means
Where you have taken the MRI.
Okay.
From the
Yes.
doctors.
Yes. Yeah. So that was. Yeah. This is.
Yeah, the next one. Yeah. So how did you plot this one, first one?
Yeah. So this is using brainstorm toolbox we utilize. In brainstorm toolbox, you can use that, and you can do that.
Okay, so manually we can actually locate that.
Manually mean, yeah. So
No, my question is actually, since
Lord.
this EEG was taken from real-time EEG was taken from doctors, am I right? So how do you inject this ink? It's a kind of artificial created figure. So, like, how did you manage this, fine energy there, or
No.
dipole movement there?
Yeah. So basically, this is like, I mean, the toolbox. Okay. So the toolbox we utilize that algorithm, S-Loretta. Okay. So just like for dipole fitting, there is a music algorithm. For dipole imaging, there is S-Loretta.
Okay.
So as you see that, here, I mean, right hand side, we are plotting the music, and as I said, that this XYZ, I mean, and this is a 4-dimensional plot. So we are getting a peak, right, at different XYZ location. So similarly here also, so this is a dipole imaging method. So once you give the MRI scan of the patient to that toolbox, and maybe easy also. So I mean, because this plotting and all this done by the student, right? Toolbox, and they're experted, right? So yeah, maybe we can have some similar talk for that, or hands-on experience sometime later.
Sure. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. So yeah.
So thank you, sir. Thank you. It was a wonderful talk, and we learned about in real time that how can we determine the source from the given EEG signals. So that's a good talk. So participants, if you have any more questions, then we can take. Otherwise, we can close the session. Before that, you have to take a screenshot. So I request participants to turn on their videos. Yeah, some more participants. Only 2 participants are turning on the video. At least 9 to 10 participants has to turn on. There are 42 participants and only few participants are turning on the video. Okay, I think I have taken a screenshots, so that will be okay now. Yeah, so thank you all the participants as well as our speaker, which gave a very encouraging and new topic. So it was a really new topic, and we learned about how to find the sources, which was all the other speakers actually they are using features directly from the EEG signals to determine some kind of class in the given EEG signal. But this was actually in the inverse problem. Like we can go to the source and then there we can localize that particular brain activity. So thank you, sir. Thank you for accepting our invitation. And thank you all the participants. Please fill the attendance and feedback form for this session. And we will meet after lunch. That is at 2:30 we'll meet for the next session. Thank you. Thank you all.
Thank
Thank you,
you.
sir. Thank you.